Part one of the full interview between Cristiano Ronaldo and Piers Morgan has now been released. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to run through all the main talking points, everything that Ronaldo said, from talking about Solskjaer nearly joining Man City, Ralf Rangnick, to young players, to setting example, to what happened following the death of his son. Everything is going to be covered in this video, so make sure you let me know what you think in the comments below. This is an interview that's been drip fed out to Manchester United fans since Sunday. It's now Wednesday. We're still waiting for the second half of the interview, and no doubt they've waited for and they kept all the explosive parts back. But there's one thing I want to say at the very, very beginning to this video, and it's this. Genuinely, I found it a bit sad watching quite a bit of that interview, because you're just watching Piers Morgan at work. This is a man who lives in his own echo chamber, a man who's blocked me because I criticised him for how he was representing this interview throughout this entire week. A man who refuses to accept any criticism and just blocks it and gets rid of it. Either Ronaldo doesn't see what he's doing with the loaded questions, or he doesn't really understand it, or he knows exactly what he's doing and he's chosen Piers Morgan just to get the biggest exposure possible. I'll leave you down to how you want to interpret that. But let's dive into this interview and let's run through every single point. And at the beginning, right at the start, he talked about nearly joining Manchester City. He said, honestly, it was close, my move to City. They spoke a lot. Guardiola said they tried hard to have me, but my history at United and my heart made the difference. And of course, Sir Alex Ferguson. My heart spoke loud in that moment. Let's not be disingenuous here. You were going to join City, but you didn't join City. It was only Fergie ringing and probably Man United offering more money that stopped him going City. Otherwise, you would have joined City. It's got nothing really to do with anything else. Let's move on from that one quickly. Now, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a manager who was criticised heavily at Manchester United for being a joke. It's not how Cristiano Ronaldo sees him. He says, I love Solskjaer. I think he was a top person because of what I keep inside my heart. It's the heart of the person. And Ole, for me, is a top person. It's hard to assume the role after Fergie, but I think he did a good job. Solskjaer was a good person, was a great person, and remains a great person. And that's why we got that bounce after Mourinho. And that's why it was so hard for me. I'm sure it was hard for a lot of you as well about what happened with him. But I'm happy about that part, to see Solskjaer getting some praise. But from a complete flip from how he spoke about Solskjaer was how he spoke about Ralf Rangnick. And we got that clip about him early in the week, and we've got some more information on that now that he's spoken about it more. He said, when you sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you should bring in a top manager, not a sporting director. In the end, deep inside me, I never saw him as the boss because I saw some points that I never agreed with. And he goes, of course, I have to respect him, and I call him the boss because he assumed the job regardless. All the coaches I have in my career, I call them boss because if they assume the job, we have to call them that way. But he said he'd never heard of Ralf Rangnick. And that's more a criticism of Ronaldo and the people that he surrounds him with rather than Ralf Rangnick himself. Because when he was brought in effectively as a semi-sporting director. He was brought in on an interim basis to give the club time to go and get Erik ten Hag effectively, which was the absolute right decision. Imagine we had got Conte then and the shitstorm that would have happened there. And we wouldn't have Erik ten Hag now. I think Ralf Rangnick was part of this process, and I wouldn't change a thing that has happened because we're at Erik ten Hag now. And I think he's being massively disrespectful of Ralf Rangnick, and the fact that he didn't know about him is not necessarily Ralf Rangnick's fault. In fact, it's not Rangnick's fault. It's down to Ronaldo and the people he surrounds him with more than Ralf. And he went into it in a bit more detail here when he spoke about the pressing game. And it got a little bit Cantona and seagulls following the trawler here. He was asked about his criticisms of the pressing game. He goes, it's something I don't understand. New coaches coming around think they found the last Coca-Cola in the desert. I respect coaches that have different approaches, but some points I don't agree. Well, of course you don't agree. Ronaldo's not a pressing forward. Ronaldo's never been a pressing forward. Ronaldo never will be a pressing forward. And that's been a big part of why everything's jarred since Solskjaer left. And it's probably a reason why he loves Solskjaer so much, because we played to Ronaldo. And we got goals out of him. Will we be better as a team? You can leave. Nah, I don't want to talk about that. I just want to react to everything that was said in the interview here. This part here, I mean, really? Cristiano Ronaldo saying that he's not the kind of guy that likes to give advice, but he likes to be the guy To give an example, this is while he's sitting down with Piers Morgan, giving an unauthorised interview that's blown the lid off his relationship with Eric Ten Hag, with the board of directors, with the club, that is paying him currently over £500,000 a week. With a lot of the younger players, he's not named, and he's only named a couple of United players currently, as players that he considers that have the right attitude and approach to have longevity in the game. This is the player that's walked out against Rayo Vallecano, that walked off, refused to come on as a substitute. Dude, you have been setting an example your whole career in terms of the professionalism you've had to be at the very top for so long. But don't be saying that you prefer to set an example after everything that you've done this season at Manchester United, because it's quite the opposite. That's what I think so anyway. Now, going on to the next point where Ronaldo speaks about younger players, I'll tell you what, kind of sounds a little bit like your dad, like moaning about the generation below. I think he's got some pretty valid points, because I don't know whether that makes me a moany old man as well, but I kind of agree with some of them. He said, all leagues in the world, the youngest now, they are not the same as my generation, but we cannot blame them, because it's part of the life. The new generation and new technologies that we avoided, they distract them for another thing. The youngsters live in a different era, and the mentality is not the same. The hunger is different. They get things more easily. They don't suffer, not only with United, but all teams, and we can't blame them. It's part of the new generation. And he said this as well. He goes, it doesn't surprise me, but in the same way, it's a little bit of a shame. Because if they have the best examples in front of your eyes, and if they don't at least copy what you did, for me, it's kind of weird. And I have to admit, there is some complete truth in what Ronaldo's saying there. I think it's part of society. It's like if you finish a series on Netflix, you immediately want the next series on Netflix. Without waiting a second, hell no, I deserve one right now. And there is a sense of entitlement and immediate gratification that comes in society now because content, there's so much content. Hell, you're listening to me speak here. It's content overload. It's why I think the quality of music, there's so much music going out, so many films going out. And with that reflects into the players and the sense of entitlement they have at a younger age for a bigger contract at a younger age. And unfortunately, United, we've given too many of those out. And it's not helped the culture at the club. So I think Ronaldo, in criticising some youngsters there, I kind of understand the point. But I suppose it's a little bit of a Roy Keane moment when you think about it. He's effectively criticising the majority of the youngsters at Manchester United without naming names directly. And remember, of course, Roy Keane, that interview with MUTV after he slagged the whole, so many players and youngsters. It's interesting as a comparison. He said here, I remember when I was 18, 19, 20, and he had Van Nistelrooy, Ferdinand, Keane and Giggs around him. That's why I have the success and longevity. And again, that point's kind of fair enough. It's the reason why the class of 92 existed and succeeded. Because we had Cantona, because we had Bruce, because we had Keane. We had those solid players around them that allowed the youngsters to come through in that environment. And that's why I'm really happy the Garnacho's got Ten Hag. Now, in terms of players that he actually named, he went for his compatriot Diogo Dalot. He said he's young, very professional, and I don't doubt that he's going to have longevity in football. Also named Martinez and Casemiro as two examples. Diogo Dalot has shown this year he's impressed everybody. He started every game for Manchester United, I believe, apart from the game where he was suspended. And he's grown as an athlete, grown as a footballer, grown as an individual, for sure. So I can understand that. And it is a good example of where somebody can go to from where they were the previous year, just through hard graft, listening to instructions, having a good coach, and working on it. But he effectively did throw a lot of the youngsters under the bus. Maybe not throw youngsters under the bus. I'm not going to load him. I'm not going to put that as a loaded statement. He certainly clearly isn't happy with how youngsters saw him, I suppose, at Carrington. And the fact that why aren't they copying me? Why aren't they just looking at what I'm doing and trying to learn from it? And there is, fair enough, to a certain degree. In terms of what else was said in the interview, let's dive a little bit further here. He said, look, I care for the people who like me. I'm not wasting time for the people who don't like me. I think it's a waste of time. These people are not interesting to me in my life. And he went a little bit a step further. He was asked about pundits, and he says, look, I really don't understand people like that. Or if they want to be in the cover of a paper of news, or if they want new jobs or whatever. And Piers, of course, loaded the question, started talking about Neville, started talking about Rooney. Criticism is allowed when it's justified. It's part of growth. You can't really succeed if you don't understand what failure is. So I think really when you take a step back and you go, right, Ronaldo's been in the game for so long And I imagine footballers are taught to sort of ignore, don't focus on what's in the press, otherwise it's going to drag you down. He's built up this brick wall where he just won't listen to any criticism. To the point now where that's created a bit of an echo chamber, and that's probably why he's getting on with Piers Morgan. Because Ronaldo's got that from an athletic perspective, and Piers Morgan has that echo chamber from a journalistic perspective, and that's why it works, and that's why there's synergy between the two, and that's why they like each other. Because they both just ignore. Look, I criticise Piers Morgan. What does he go and fucking do? He blocks me. He doesn't want to listen to it. By doing that, by getting rid of all the noise he doesn't want to hear, he just hears everything he wants to hear, which is pretty much what's going on with Cristiano Ronaldo here. And he did speak at length, and in terms of this was the part of the interview that I was not looking forward to in a horrible way, but it's the part that I wanted to listen to. I wanted to hear Ronaldo speak about how that impacted him and the death of his son. And he spoke in quite a lot of length about that. He said it was difficult to play right after the passing of his baby boy. He said it was very difficult to play after that. I've always had good support from my family. Georgina told me to go play and do what I like to do and try and, forget about the situation. Anybody who's had to deal with any sort of grief in life, it's tough, man. It's the difference between being a child and being an adult. Life lessons. It does harden you because you have to, because life's gonna be a dick, and life will do something else in the future. And I've learned quite a lot over the last few years, and I'm not comparing my situation. This isn't a comparison. This is me empathizing because I've had my own things that I've had to deal with. And for Ronaldo to come back and play so soon after, it blew my mind. But that was, I suppose, his method of dealing with the grief. And now I think across the course of this season, I imagine there might be longer forms of grief that are now affecting him and affecting this whole situation, which does confuse it and does make it difficult. But I have to go back to this, right? Overall, I have to go back to this because when you take a step back and you think, right, what have I just watched? Just sat there for 45 minutes watching Cristiano Ronaldo speak to Piers Morgan. And you're like, what is going on? And it's it's a sort of moment that we'll look back on in a few years' time and go, fucking hell, that was crazy. This is crazy. And tomorrow, I've no doubt that they've saved the juiciest parts to tomorrow. So I'll probably do another reaction video here, and you can let me know what you think in the comments. But I want to go back to what I said at the very, very start. Either Ronaldo doesn't see what Piers Morgan is doing, doesn't understand what Piers Morgan is doing, or he does. And he just wants the biggest platform for this to sit on, because he knows he's getting sacked anyway. So he wants to lay it all out on the table. I'd like you to let me know what you think about that in the comments below. What do you think of everything that was said in the interview? Anything that I didn't really cover that you feel like I should have talked about a bit more? Let me know in the comments. But, man, what a crazy, crazy week for Manchester United.